What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about Bitcoin. Now, I recently just bought a little bit more of Bitcoin, and I haven't made an update on the channel in a while about the digital asset, so I thought this would be a perfect time to update my thoughts on where Bitcoin's at today, what's going on with the fundamentals, and then why I thought it made sense for me to buy it in my personal portfolio. So Bitcoin, you've probably been reading, has been crashing tremendously, or crashed out the entirety of 2017. The stock price is down almost 80 or 85% from its all-time high. Bitcoin hit about $20,000 in late 2017, early 2018, and then now is trading at just under $4,000. So a huge pullback in Bitcoin. This is a lot of people wondering whether the currency is ever going to recover, whether it's just going to keep crashing. Basically, a lot of people have written it off. And this is, of course, when I get more interested. Be greedy when others are fearful. I personally have been following Bitcoin for about 5 years now. Started writing about it when I went to college at NYU, owned a little. Actually, the reason why you're watching this channel is because I cashed out of Bitcoin. I had a bunch around 600 that I bought, and I cashed out around 13,000 per Bitcoin, made 20x, and then used that to fund my YouTube channel. And so I've had success with Bitcoin with the past. I'm fascinated by this concept of what Bitcoin is, a digital version of gold, an algorithm-based blockchain system that is a deflationary currency system rivaling our inflationary currency system. Just as a finance economics nerd, I think there's so much fascinating stuff going on with Bitcoin. I mean, this is an asset that today at 3,000 or 4,000 trades for a market capitalization of about $65 billion, which sounds huge, but when you consider who Bitcoin's competing with, I mean, this is fundamentally a system of currency. For example, gold, there's about 7.5 trillion worth of gold in the world. If we assume that Bitcoin, even fully diluted, hits the network value of gold, then the price per Bitcoin would be 350,000, so per Bitcoin. So if you believe that Bitcoin could be digital gold, it could go up 100x from today's price to meet that market capitalization. And then if you start comparing Bitcoin to fiat currencies that are in the tens of trillions, you could eventually get to a price of $1 million per Bitcoin. So that's the way I kind of look at Bitcoin, and why it's fascinating from my perspective. If even though it's a $65 billion asset, I still look at it as sort of a venture moonshot, 10, 20 multi-bagger potential super risky bet on this new technology of a deflationary monetary system and digital gold. I've still held my Bitcoin since I cashed out about a year ago, but only a very, very tiny amount. And I decided to buy in 2 transactions over the past 2 weeks, a little bit more Bitcoin, not much at all. It's like less than 1 Tesla share combined, I think. It's like $300 worth of Bitcoin. But I did buy it, and it was deliberate, and I wanted to talk about why. But before what gets me too excited about Bitcoin, let's just take a peek under the hood at the fundamentals of Bitcoin, or at least what I think the fundamentals are and how those are trending. So the first thing I look at with Bitcoin, besides price obviously, is daily transactions. How many transactions are happening on Bitcoin's main blockchain? This is a great proxy for just how much activity is on the blockchain. And one of my theories as an investor is if you're a currency, part of your value as a currency is in your utility as a currency. And your utility as a currency goes up as if more people are using that network, because then it's easier for me to spend my Bitcoin, and more people are using it, more people are spending it. So the value of my Bitcoin goes up as the network grows. So transactions are a great proxy for the health and size of the network. And so we have, as you can see, what I think is really interesting is Bitcoin transactions on the main chain were growing really rapidly until 2017, and then sort of hit a wall around 300,000. And then they did spike up dramatically at the end of 2018. But I think most of that transactions were speculative buying, investing, not really use cases on the blockchain. But ever since then, despite this huge pullback in the price of crypto in 2018, the transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain have actually been going back up in an uptrend. So I think this is a really, really positive sign. But even perhaps a more important and better proxy for how much activity is going on the Bitcoin network is how much is sent in billions of dollars. Because a transaction, it could be $1, it could be, $1 billion, and it'll still show up as one transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's why dollars sent is almost even a better gauge of how big the network is. And eventually, there's this theory that not all transactions will run through the main Bitcoin blockchain. It'll be all these side chains. It will just settle everything on the main Bitcoin blockchain. So really, in the long run, dollar cent in USD is the metric to watch. So that's what we're looking at here. And as you can see, there's a mega spike in terms of Bitcoin sent per day, over 50 billion, I know it says G on the chart, but that's billions, of Bitcoin sent per day right at the start of 2018. And that has come in a pretty consistent downtrend with the pullback in crypto. But what I think is still interesting to note is Bitcoin is still moving, $3, $4, $5 billion a day worth of capital. So if we assume that on average, Bitcoin's moving 4 billion per day on its network value 65 billion, 65 billion divided by 4, we get to about 16.5 times market value to actually money moved on the network. So I don't know if that's cheap or if expensive, but it seems pretty reasonable to me. I mean, Bitcoin is an asset as a currency that's worth 65 billion on an annualized basis. It's moving over $1 trillion worth of capital. So for 65 billion, I think that's a pretty good deal. In terms of the next metric that I'm looking at, it's transaction fees. How much does it cost to actually process a transaction on the Bitcoin network? And this chart is really funny because it spiked astronomically, like crazy, at the end of 2018 when everyone was trying to buy the network. Essentially what happened is the network got clogged. And so that was why the transaction fee spiked. But now in 2019, we've had this huge pullback and decrease in the cost to transact on the Bitcoin network. The average fee as of January 2nd that I'm looking at is 26 cents per transaction. So that's probably less than, Square is charging whatever merchant that swipes a credit card. So for all those people who are complaining about the transaction fees of Bitcoin, actually, while the network has gotten less clogged and has scaled, the transaction fees come down dramatically. So this is a really, really encouraging sign for the fundamentals of the network as well. Now, the last metric I'm tracking is the hash rate. Now, this is the security of the network. As far as I can understand, this is basically explaining how much computing power would be needed to do a 51% attack on the network, essentially break the cryptocurrency. And so if this goes up, the network's more secure, therefore it has more inherent value. So it was scary, actually. And as you can see, this is, taken off like a rocket ship since Bitcoin's inception. Barely noticed the pullback in crypto until just a couple months ago, with the pullback in crypto finally did hit the hash rate. We're going to talk more about why in a second. But now it's bounced back up and the hash rate is still well above where it was a year ago. So the network is still very, very secure. And this has been an uptrend as well. So the fundamentals of Bitcoin, as far as I can see, have been doing very, very well. The currency is still healthy. It's still meeting all these promises to have the potential to be digital gold. It's just that the price is falling and the hype for Bitcoin has died down. So that's exactly why I'm so fascinated. I love the potential of the technology. I don't think it's going to, I still think there's only maybe a 5 to 10% chance this bull case of digital gold works. But if it does work, I make 100x my money. So even if I only think there's a 5 to 10% chance, that's maybe a 1 to 10 to 1 to 20 chance of me making 100x my money. That's a good bet that I want to make every time. And so that's kind of the back of the napkin math of why I like Bitcoin. Now, the other thing of why I talked about that was so interesting here is miner profitability. So when I said that the hash rate decreased, I think why the hash rate finally decreased is because Bitcoin miners, essentially people running huge server farms to authenticate transactions on the network, were unprofitable for so long because the price was going down because they get paid in Bitcoin. So if the price of Bitcoin goes down, they're getting paid less. There's a certain break-even point, and when it's below that break-even point, they're losing money. So my understanding was that break-even point was around $6,000. So Bitcoin was supported at that $6,000 level for a while. But then when it broke through, all these miners became unprofitable and then stopped mining, and then the hash rate of the network decreased, but now we're seeing that bounce back. So this is why I decided now I wanted to buy Bitcoin, and why I think we're getting closer and closer to a catalyst of either Bitcoin goes in this downward spiral and dies, or Bitcoin starts a new bull run and goes up dramatically to new all-time highs. And I think we're coming to this point because of the miners' break-even price. Like I said, it was 6,000. According to Charlie Lee, who's this Bitcoin expert, he says it's 7,300 now and rising. So Bitcoin needs to double just to get to a break-even price by the miners. And there's a ton of conspiracy theories in the Bitcoin community of the miners are secretly controlling the price. And if you look at the price movement every year or two before the halving happens, oh, and that's the other thing I didn't mention. So not only is it underwater to mine Bitcoin now, but the reward for mining and authenticating transactions on the blockchain is about to get cut in half, the halving in 2020. Why does this matter? Because if the break-even price is 7,300 now, let's say, and everything else stays constant, but now you're getting half as many rewards because of the halving in a year, then the break-even price doubles immediately to around 15,000. And please comment if that math is correct, because I'm still learning about the blockchain and Bitcoin. It's complicated, but that's per my understanding. So we're already, we're trading at 3,800 or 900 now. 7,300 is the break-even mining price, which is about to double in the year 2020. And my opinion of just economics here is if Bitcoin the halving happens and we're still way below the break-even price for miners, the miners are going to start fleeing the network like crazy. And this is going to create this downward spiral where the network's getting less secure, miners are fleeing, the price keeps dropping, the miners are liquidating, and then we just have this downward death spiral, and Bitcoin basically becomes worth very, very little or worthless, and the blockchain becomes broken because the incentive system just didn't work because it wasn't profitable enough to mine. But on the flip side of that, if Bitcoin is to survive, then it should find support well above that. In fact, Charlie Lee, this Bitcoin bull, I don't know if he actually knows what he's talking about, but he claims that Bitcoin historically has traded about 2.5x the break-even mining price. So if in a year, the break-even mining price is 15,000, Bitcoin trades at 2.5x that, we're looking at a $40,000 price per coin, or 10,000 or 10 X from where it is today in the next year. Although that sounds crazy, if you look at the Bitcoin chart, I mean, this is the kind of thing that's normal for Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin went up from like 600 to 20 grand in the matter of 18 months or so. And then it crashed from 20 grand to 3 grand in the next year. I mean, Bitcoin has done these massive 80% pullbacks before, only to go way back up to new highs in the long run eventually. And so my theory is that, we saw Bitcoin go to $1,000 in late 2013, pull back to 200. Then we saw it go way up to 20,000 and then pull back to 3,000 in late 2018 or late 2017, early 2018. Now my opinion is we're seeing it at 3,000, 4,000 now. It'll go back up to probably over 100,000 per Bitcoin on the next bull run. That is just my opinion. And so that's sort of what gets me excited about Bitcoin is I see two paths. I see either we get this downward death spiral of destruction, it goes to zero, I lost all my money, okay, learning lesson, or Bitcoin bounces back, the miners somehow figure out how to get the price back up so it's profitable, the system's back online, it's working, the fundamentals are better than ever, the brand is better than ever, we see another bull run to all-time highs, and you're looking at a multi-bagger potential on your investment. And so that is what has me so excited about Bitcoin. And there's one last thing that I forget to mention, which is the X factor that has me super bullish: the Lightning Network. So like I said, Bitcoin in the future, not everything, that cup of coffee that you want to buy with Bitcoin is not going to be settled on the main blockchain. It's too costly and it's too slow. Eventually, you're going to be settling this on second layer solutions. And this is very similar to how our financial system works today. And this is why it's so incorrect to compare Bitcoin to Visa in terms of fees or transactions per second, because Bitcoin is the layer 1 solution. Visa is the layer like 3 or 4 solution for our current monetary system. So Bitcoin is in the process of, or the Bitcoin community is in the process of building layer 2 solutions on top of Bitcoin that won't be settled on the main blockchain, but that will aggregate a bunch of transactions, then settle them all at once, which means vastly lower transaction fees for users. And so this is called the Lightning Network, is the leading layer 2 solution for Bitcoin. And the Lightning Network is out. It's working in the wild. I've been tracking its progress. And from what I can tell, it's doing really, really well. And so I found this article from Bitcoin Magazine that showed that there was 4,000 nodes on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Not 100% sure what that means, but they had over a $1 million Bitcoin capacity, about 1.2 million to be exact. And this was November 16th, 2018. Then I went today to the Lightning Network stats, and the Lightning Network, as far as I could tell, had over about a $2.1 million Bitcoin capacity, or 545 Bitcoin. So the Lightning Network now has a $2 million capacity, up from 1.2 million just 2 months ago. So it's in the wild. It's growing rapidly. They're working on scaling this technology, which could really unlock Bitcoin and lead to its next phase of growth. And when I think about Bitcoin being, disrupting the dollar, really rivaling these huge currencies, the Lightning Network is a huge step. Layer 2 needs to be developed. It needs to be working to get there. This is one of the huge fundamental drivers of Bitcoin value, and it's making tremendous progress. So what Bitcoin, $20,000 a year ago, we were looking at a network with a lower hash rate, with minimal progress on the actual Lightning Network, and something that was trading for hundreds of billions of market cap. Now we're looking at something trading for 60 billion, which has a higher hash rate and has, a Lightning Network that's working in the wild, that's scaling rapidly. So the fundamentals of Bitcoin, what you're getting for what you're paying, has almost never been a better deal, especially when you consider the fact that the brand of Bitcoin has never been better. And you may say like, oh, the brand's tarnished, it's hurt, everyone's scared of Bitcoin. Forget about it. If you've heard about Bitcoin, that's good. People know Bitcoin. They know it's this wonky technology, new currency thing. I mean, that is brand value that I think it will make it go up faster the next time it starts rising, because everybody's going to be familiar with it. Anyway, that sort of sums up, my thoughts on Bitcoin. And in my personal portfolio, like I've basically been investing all my money and excess capital into the channel. But what's awesome is, thanks to you guys and thanks to the channel growing, I finally this month had like a little bit of money to invest. It wasn't quite enough to buy a Tesla share, so I put it into Bitcoin because I've sort of had an itch to buy more Bitcoin for a while. It's been building. And the more I started looking at the Lightning Network and the progress I've been seeing, the more sort of confident I am that I think Bitcoin's not dead. And if it's not dead, it's going a lot higher. And the last thing I will mention is Jack Dorsey. I've said this before on the channel, but CEO of Square, CEO of Twitter, is a huge investor in this company called Lightning Labs, which is a private company building the Lightning Network for Bitcoin. So I also think you have people like Jack Dorsey who want to see the Lightning Network happen, who could single-handedly drive the price of Bitcoin through the roof just by integrating Bitcoin into Square, which he's already doing with the Cash App. So anyway, that sums up my thoughts on Bitcoin. Be greedy when others are fearful. I've been lucky with Bitcoin in the past. We'll see what happens this time. I'm going to be documenting it on the channel. Anyway, would love to know what you think in the comments below. Are you bullish on Bitcoin, bearish on Bitcoin? Is it all BS? Let me know what you think. Also, a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, producers. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and subscribing to the newsletter. Anyway, this is Hyperchange. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.